Taehyung couldn't breathe. The greenhouse suddenly felt too small despite being enormous. Moonlight spilled through the glass ceiling above, silver against thousands of flowers blooming inside the humid air. White roses, dark lilies, vines crawling across the walls like veins. Beautiful. Everything about this place was beautiful, including the monster standing in the center of it. Jeongguk smiled through the glass, not surprised, not angry, almost relieved, like he had been waiting for Taehyung to come. The tied man in the chair continued crying quietly, blood dripping onto the marble floor beneath him. Taehyung stumbled backward instinctively, his heartbeat pounded violently against his ribs. Run. Every nerve inside him screamed to run. But the greenhouse door opened before he could move. Jeongguk stepped outside calmly. Cold night air wrapped around them instantly. For a moment, neither spoke. Taehyung stared at the blood staining Jeongguk's black gloves. Jeongguk stared at Taehyung like none of that mattered. "You should be asleep," Jeongguk said softly. Taehyung actually laughed, a small, breathless sound filled with disbelief. "There's a man tied to a chair in there." "Yes." "You're insane." Jeongguk tilted his head slightly. "That's rude." Taehyung looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "Rude?" The sudden outburst echoed through the garden. Inside the greenhouse, the tied man whimpered again. Taehyung flinched immediately. Jeongguk noticed. Of course he noticed. He noticed everything. "You're scared," Jeongguk murmured quietly. Taehyung swallowed hard. "Shouldn't I be?" Silence. Then, unexpectedly, Jeongguk stepped closer and removed one bloody glove finger by finger. Slowly, almost elegantly. "You know," he said calmly, "most people scream when they see this side of me." Taehyung's chest tightened. "Should I?" "No." Jeongguk smiled faintly. "I don't think you'll ever truly run from me." That sentence hit something uncomfortable deep inside Taehyung, and he hated it. "Who is that man?" Taehyung whispered. Jeongguk glanced back toward the greenhouse. "A liar." "That doesn't explain why he's tied to a chair." "He betrayed me." The answer came too easily. Like betrayal justified anything. Taehyung shook his head slowly. "You talk like people belong to you." Jeongguk looked back at him immediately. "They do." The honesty in that answer disturbed Taehyung more than shouting ever could. "You can't control people like possessions." "Can I?" Jeongguk stepped closer again. Now Taehyung could see tiny bloodstains near Jeongguk's collar too. Something about that sight made his stomach twist, strangely. Fear. Definitely fear. Probably. "You should stop looking at me like that," Jeongguk murmured. Taehyung frowned. "Like what?" "Like you're trying to understand me." The words came out almost gentle, dangerously gentle. Taehyung looked away first. Big mistake, because Jeongguk suddenly reached forward and grabbed his chin softly. Not hard, not violent, but possessive enough to make Taehyung freeze instantly. "There," Jeongguk whispered. "Now you're shaking." Taehyung's breath hitched. Their faces were too close, way too close. Jeongguk's eyes looked even darker under moonlight, endless, exhausted, beautiful in a way that felt genuinely unsafe. Taehyung should have pushed him away. Instead, he forgot how to move. Inside the greenhouse, the tied man suddenly cried out again. Reality snapped back instantly. Taehyung jerked away from Jeongguk and stepped backward. "What are you even doing?" Something unreadable flickered across Jeongguk's expression. "You tell me." Taehyung stared at him. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away quickly. He could feel Jeongguk watching him the entire time, like a hand around his throat. The next morning felt unreal. Taehyung barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw blood on black gloves. Jeongguk smiling, that tied man begging the way Jeongguk touched his face. Worst of all, a tiny part of Taehyung kept replaying the moment over and over like it meant something, which was deeply humiliating. "Wow," Jimin said while sitting across from him at breakfast. "You look terrible." "Thank you. You look like you got murdered emotionally." "That's oddly specific." Jimin narrowed his eyes suspiciously. "Did something happen last night?" Taehyung immediately grabbed his coffee cup. "No." Lie. A terrible lie. Unfortunately, Jimin knew him too well. "You're doing that thing." "What thing?" "The thing where you avoid eye contact when you're hiding something." Taehyung sighed dramatically. "You're annoying. And you're deflecting." Before Taehyung could answer, the entire dining room suddenly shifted. People straightened instantly. Conversations died. Fear quietly spread across the room. Taehyung didn't even need to look up anymore. Jeongguk. The man walked into breakfast, wearing a black dress shirt with rolled sleeves, exposing tattooed forearms. Several older relatives greeted him nervously. Jeongguk ignored most of them. Instead, his eyes found Taehyung immediately, like they always would. Taehyung felt heat crawl up his neck uncomfortably. "Oh my God," Jimin whispered. "What?" "He's staring again." "Stop looking." "I can't. This is horrifying." Taehyung kicked Jimin under the table. Jeongguk began walking toward them. "No, absolutely not." Taehyung suddenly became very interested in his coffee. Too late. A chair pulled out beside him. Jeongguk sat down casually. The entire table went silent. Even Hoseok looked stressed now. "Good morning," Jeongguk said softly. Nobody answered immediately. Then Namjoon cleared his throat politely. "Morning." Jeongguk ignored everyone except Taehyung. "You disappeared last night." Taehyung nearly choked on coffee. Jimin's eyes widened. Hoseok looked between them like he was witnessing a car crash in slow motion. Taehyung forced a smile. "I went to sleep." Jeongguk rested his chin against his hand lazily. "You should have stayed longer." The tension at the table became unbearable instantly. Jimin looked ready to pass out. Taehyung stared at Jeongguk in disbelief. Was this psychopath flirting right now? At breakfast? After torture? "What the hell is happening?" Hoseok whispered under his breath. Unfortunately, Jeongguk heard him. The man smiled faintly without looking away from Taehyung. "I'm getting to know him." That sentence should not have sounded so threatening, yet somehow it did. Taehyung stood abruptly. I suddenly lost my appetite and immediately regretted speaking because Jeongguk's expression darkened slightly. Tiny change, but noticeable. "You should eat," Jeongguk said quietly. Again, not a suggestion, a command. Taehyung felt irritation flare finally. "I said I'm not hungry." Silence. Cold silence. The dining room suddenly felt 10 degrees colder. Several relatives awkwardly looked away. Jeongguk stared at Taehyung for a long moment, then slowly, he smiled. But this smile looked wrong, sharp, artificial, terrifying. "All right," he said softly. Too softly. Taehyung instantly realized he'd made a mistake, a huge one, because everyone else at the table suddenly looked nervous, especially Jimin. Jeongguk stood calmly and adjusted his watch. "Enjoy your morning." Then he walked away. The second he disappeared, Hoseok groaned loudly. "Oh my God, we're all going to die." Taehyung frowned. "Why is everyone acting insane?" Namjoon looked genuinely stressed now. "Taehyung, what?" Namjoon hesitated carefully. Nobody tells Jeon Jeongguk no. Silence. Taehyung laughed nervously. You're exaggerating. No one laughed with him. And suddenly, a loud crash echoed somewhere upstairs.